Well, okay, so here's the first thing, is like, what are the different types of time travel?
What do you mean different types of time travel? I think you have to have different types of universes first, and then to define how time travel works within those different universes, right?
No, because like there's different like styles. Like there's like, there's obviously like magic, there's mechanism. There's got to be a way to categorize them.
I think there's different technologies, like you could move at near relativistic speeds, like in a super fast spaceship. That's a scientific term. And then you could come back, or you could have like one of those UFO machines that you turn on and it like uses the gravity waves around you to manipulate. See, I'm an expert on this stuff.
I guess so I'll just be asking you the questions on this one.
Hello everybody, and welcome to The Whole Rabbit, where we don't just send the rabbit back in time to kill itself.
No.
No. We send the rabbit back in time with an army of other rabbits to kill us and all of you as well.
That's creating a time paradox where there were no rabbits sent back in time in the first place.
Restoring balance to the universe.
And no more Mandela effects.
I can't get with that, though. I'm starting to really enjoy the Mandela effects because they are legit, my friend. And I have proof. Kind of. I have no proof, actually.
Okay, so what are we talking about today?
We're talking about time travel.
Oh, shit, I wouldn't have known.
You wouldn't have known because you don't do the research.
I guess not.
I mean, you claim... Well, what do you claim, Andrew?
I don't know, I've thought about time travel a lot.
Yeah, me too, man.
So much so that I've gotten this thing down to like totally scrambled it apart in my head because I got caught up in how you create a time loop if you... Well, first of all, you need to ground in like what rules
I think that's important.
You're time traveling by, like...
Okay, because in different movies, let's start there. There's different rules.
Yeah, like, there's, like...
Endgame, I like the way Endgame dealt with time travel, actually. They're like, look, you can't travel... What did they say? You can't travel into...
I didn't see Endgame, because I'm totally, like, checked out on Marvel movies.
Well, me too. That's why I went to Endgame, because I wanted to see the end of the game.
Of the game?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm waiting for Avengers DLC.
Okay.
Okay, then I'll watch that, because after Endgame, the only thing left is DLC.
Okay, so in Endgame, you can't travel into your past, because when you are traveling into your past, that's still your present, and presumably your future, if you are in fact planning to time travel. Okay, so you're always in the present. You can't go into your past. You're always in the present. That's how they deal with it. So if you go back... and kill yourself, I think that creates a new timeline. It's a lot like, I don't remember how they dealt with it in Endgame. I think it creates a new timeline.
Well, this is what I got.
Because Loki gets killed at one point in Infinity Wars, but
like right in the beginning.
But then they time travel in Endgame, and it results in Loki getting one of the cubes. I think it might be the time cube. I don't know, man. I'm not the Marvel person. You can put me on the cross about this. I don't care.
Yeah, I don't think it's cool being the Marvel person at this point.
But there's basically multiple instances of characters, I believe, or the possibility of that exists.
Well, okay, so this is what I rationalized when I was always thinking of time travel when I was, like, young and, like, growing up, is that, like, you have your timeline. This is very important that you view it as a line. And then if you go back into the past, you've created a line back to the original line, thus creating a loop.
Okay.
Where you're constantly going from one time section where you're coming back in time to the next time section where you're leaving the timeline and going back in time.
I think that's how it works in the movie Fringe, where they create a time machine that looks kind of like a filing cabinet and they shove themselves in there. And for a certain amount of time, they sit in the machine, a certain amount of time elapses backwards. And they get into this really bad loop. Spoiler, if you haven't seen Fringe yet, most people haven't.
Is that like Deja Vu with Denzel?
Let's put it this way. I won't spoil it because a lot of people probably haven't seen Fringe yet. But they lose some of their capacities. They're very subtle. And you don't notice it at first. And also, they are moving backwards and forwards on the same timeline, basically. They're moving backwards onto the same timeline.
Like in Deja Vu. Like Deja Vu with Denzel, where he's trying to solve a murder.
I don't care about spoiling that one. I did see it, but I don't remember what happened.
Oh, like he ends up doing the thing.
Because at first he thinks he's just looking into viewing equipment, right?
Yeah.
And it's actually another universe.
What, in Deja Vu?
Yeah.
No, Deja Vu, it's straight up the same universe. Like,
Oh, and he can travel in time?
yeah, they
Or
have
look
like,
at things in the future?
yeah, they had like a box that could like send things back in time.
Oh, wow.
And then like at the end, he just jumps into it. They're like, "Are you sure about this?" He's like, "I've already done it."
I remember liking the reveal where it was something like a laser.
Like they had like a camera that could view through time.
Where he's like, this isn't just a video, this is actually happening or something. Like,
Yeah.
he trips out. Like, I remember really liking the reveal on that. It was,
yeah,
it was
they had a
super cool.
camera that could view through time. And
Right.
Those are really, really weird things. But then like you have like Terminator rules, and Terminator rules is all about changing the timelines. Like you're not really going back into your timeline, even though they say
No, I
they
think
are.
you are. I think you are in Terminator. I think you're going back into your own timeline.
Well, okay, so that's the problem, is that creates time loops. If you're going back to your timeline,
That's sort of what happens because this is not a spoiler now. If you don't know this,
like Terminator 2
you've been
is
hiding
like
under a rock.
1992, so like
I think the first one was maybe
I was
even in the
2
80s.
then. I was 2 then. So like
I've been watching it my whole life. So
yeah.
John Connor knows that he has to send back his father to impregnate his mother, otherwise he won't exist. And he knows that he has to do that. I think he also probably knows that he does do that. It becomes sort of like an inevitability in a way.
It was inevitable.
This is what we're talking about first, is all the different ways time travel works, firstly in movies, and then we're going to talk about how we think it might work if it works in real life. And I think the movies we're talking about first are the ones that are the furthest from what we think real life is like. Terminator's one of these. I think it all happens on the same timeline. He has to send back his father impregnates his mother.
Not really, because it keeps changing the timeline as they keep going back and affecting it. So like they send Terminator back to kill Sarah Connor.
Okay.
That didn't work.
It did not work. Understood.
However, people got a hold of the Terminator technology, future tech in the past.
Oh, you're right. And then that's how Datadyne gets started, right?
Yeah, and that's how Skynet started getting started.
Skynet. Why did I call it
Yeah.
Datadyne?
Yeah, because I don't know, because you're weird. Because you're not a Terminator fan, I guess.
It is Skynet. That's weird because
Because you
I
just
remember
got Mandela affected, bruh.
I might have got Mandela affected because I remember the company being called Datadyne.
I think that was it could have been the company that like Skynet was under.
I believe Datadyne is a real company,
Okay.
or maybe it's the company in Perfect Dark.
Okay, so yeah, you just
It's from Perfect Dark.
okay. Yeah, you got Mandela effect hearted right there.
Yeah, man.
Skynet was actually built off of the old school Terminator tech, the Schwarzenegger Terminator tech that was sent back in the past in the first one.
So presumably the machine war was happening on a timeline.
Yeah, that interrupted itself. See, they created a time loop that they were constantly trying to fix.
How does that make sense though? Because how did Skynet ever come to exist if the machines...
Well, that's the thing, is Terminator destroyed what was left of the Terminator when, like, at the end of Terminator 2, when he jumped into the, like,
You're right.
the metal forge.
You're right. So he fixed
it, but, like, that it was still going on, right? It's still going on.
Yeah, the war was still going on. How did the war continue?
Because the war started the beginning of the war.
So let's think about it. If the Schwarzenegger Terminator...
It's eschatology.
If the T-1000...
No, seriously, it's eschatology. It's like the end created the beginning.
Okay, I think we're going to stop with Terminator there because we want to do a whole Terminator episode, and there's a lot going on in Terminator. So we're going to cut it off and
Let's
move on.
move to Back to the Future.
I've never seen Back to the Future.
Like, okay, so I don't know much about Back to the Future because I'm not a Back to the Future fan, but there are a lot of people who are hardcore
Oh, yeah.
Back to the Future fans.
We shouldn't talk about it.
I
I haven't seen it.
Okay,
You're
so
not a fan.
here's the
Why are we
thing
talking
is-
about it?
Well, here's the thing is, their thing is you're going straight into your own past, you're affecting reality in real time, pictures fade if you stop existing in the future.
See, that's really cool as a plot device, but I did see a video while I was researching this where the guy was like, there is no mechanical mechanism for this to occur.
Yeah, exactly, because that's the thing about time travel is you don't go back in time to your own past. You would, leave your probabilistic reality, of which the probability is that you leave, into a different probabilistic reality where the probabilistic set is that you enter at said time period.
You lost me, and even if you didn't, I would re-explain that.
So it's straight up like Rick and Morty, multiple universes, right?
Okay, yeah, that's
But
more
you
like
have
what
to-
I believe.
You have to go from the one that says, okay, this multi-universe you leave, and then to the next multiverse where it's like, this multiverse, according to our random number generation, you enter. You know, like, that's how it would work. It would be like this sort of like almost side scheme of like you would never really experience it because it would just be too weird.
Look, I watched a bit of Rick and Morty, not as much as a true fan should.
Oh, I loved seeing it because I'm like, oh wow, this is just like GURPS.
I don't believe I could surmise for you how it works. Is it like GURPS? Because I read the GURPS handbook. What is GURPS? GURPS is the other D&D.
Okay, yeah. GURPS is D&D that's not just fantasy.
GURPS is not D&D.
It's a general utility role-playing system.
It's a little bit like
GURPS.
Fallout. I believe Fallout might have been based on
Well,
GURPS.
okay, so it could be anything. You could be like vampire hunters in turn of the century England.
You could be spies.
You could be spies in World War II. You could be
Or in the near
cowboys. You could be cowboys in the future. You could be it's really any. You can be time travelers. They have all these rule sets, and there's a rule set called Quantum, which has to do with time travel.
Nan, I sat there when I first discovered your brother had the books for GURPS. I sat down and read the rules for time travel as if they were real. Like,
Yeah, because that's what they sound like, and that's straight up where Rick and Morty got their multiple universe thing. It's straight up like, that's a GURPS campaign, is Rick and Morty. They're doing multiple worlds.
okay.
And that's why I enjoyed it at first, until like I figured that Rick Sanchez is just Dan Harmon's alcoholism, like personified in a positive light, or meant to like make it seem positive.
That's what a lot of people really started thinking, or like that's the general sentiment around the show.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just not socially hip enough, because it went from being like everyone thinks this is hilarious to overnight being like, we all hate this. And I just was I didn't get the memo. So I still think it's funny. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
there's parts that I still laugh at, but I don't like it because, Dan Harmon's just such a sad character, man. The more I learn about him, the more I just can't appreciate what he creates.
well, I think there's other people that would sympathize with your perspective. I just am inept, I suppose. So okay, Rick and Morty time travel. I guess this is a bit disturbing. Works more like how we think time travel actually works. Because if I had to guess, like the GURPS handbook was written by a time traveler, or they knew something.
Oh yeah, they got the Illuminati symbols all over their shit. Like
It's from that. It feels like from that wheelhouse, like Robert Anton Wilson, Discordianism, the card game, the Illuminati card game.
Same company.
Oh really?
Yeah, literally same company.
We might have to do an episode on that.
Oh, we're totally gonna get the Illuminati card game.
Oh, okay, we should get a copy.
Support us on our Patreon so we can get an Illuminati card game.
Yeah, $5 a month. You get an extra show a month, which we will be recording today. We're like maybe a few days behind on this one. You get all your episodes a few days early and the high resolution versions of our artwork. Yeah, we're plugging ourselves. Commercial time.
Commercial time.
That is how time travel works in GURPS, but it is also how time travel works in this reality, if you're going to believe the story of John Titor.
So who's John Titor? Because you gotta like really tell me about this guy.
Oh boy. Well, I heard about him here and there growing up. Recently, I dug in to do the research to figure out more about him. He appeared first on a time travel forum.
Time travel forum?
I believe so. Let me double check.
You look at your notes.
I have notes. I took notes.
Research guy.
I took what I thought was important.
Alright, so like, who is he?
Okay, he claims to be from the American military
Alright.
in 2036.
Okay, so he's from the near future to us.
Yes. And the way time travel works, according to John Titor, is you don't really move anywhere on your home line. You just move to alternative universes that have a certain degree of variance, which I think is really cool. I really like that idea. Like you could like move timelines, and the variance is maybe like gigapets are still super popular, but they're like high tech and like networked or something. And they're just a really cool toy that like tweens have just never let go of, and they've just continued to evolve. Like that could be part of the variance. but everything else is mostly the same. Or like, Hillary Clinton is president,
No, I think we went through like we went through a huge harmonic convergence where like we like left that reality. Like maybe Hillary Clinton never became president in any reality.
Well,
maybe
get
it
there.
Was that bad.
Because I'm from the Berenstain Bears universe. I don't know who the Berenstains are, but that's the universe I'm in now. I come from the Ein universe, and I'm in the Ain universe now. And
I'm from the Bernstein Bears.
Yeah, that's the universe I'm from.
No, you're from the Berenstein Bears.
Yeah.
I'm from the Bernstein Bears.
Well, that's how people pronounced it. But I remember the title being really long like that. And having a friggin' E in it. E-I-N.
E-I-N?
Because a stain is an English word.
Okay, now we're drifting into Mandela Effect.
Yeah. Well, okay, so Mandela...
We got there a little too early.
We got there a little too early, but so let's keep talking about John Titor, okay? Because Mandela Effect... Mandela Effect is explained through John Titor's explanation of how time travel works, because I believe he said there was a 2.25% variance during his travel. And there's a reason for him stopping in the 90s. So let's get into that. Like, why did he come back?
He had to go and see a Smashing Pumpkins concert.
Yeah.
We all know.
That's what I would do.
If you could time travel, you just go back to the 90s.
Excuse me. When I time travel.
When you time travel.
I will go see the Smashing Pumpkins in the early 90s.
We will be alive in 2036, and we will have access to time travel.
Yeah, John Titor.
Thanks to your Patreons and all the crowdfunding that all you fine folk will be doing.
So John Titor. So we're all gonna go see the Smashing Pumpkins. It's gonna be weird.
Yeah, it's gonna be like South Park time travel.
Okay, so John Titor. God. If I were the audience, I would hate us. All right. So, all right. John Titor. American military from 2036. Why did he come back? He had to retrieve an IBM 5100 in order to fix a serious computing error afflicting his civilization. Originally, the threads appeared in November 2010 on the Time Travel Institute forum, but it began to gather attention when the same poster appeared on Art Bell's BBS forum in March of 2001. Man, the internet was such a different place back then. You think that stuff will never disappear from the internet, but it totally does. Unless the government, because the government has everything.
Well, nowadays with censorship, they're trying to erase things off the internet.
So this is what he says in his beginning post. Greetings, I'm a time traveler from 2036. I'm on my way to gather this computer. My time machine is a stationary mass temporal displacement unit manufactured by GE, General Electric. The unit is powered by two top-spin dual positive singularities that produce a standard offset Tipler sinusoid.
What does that mean?
I'll be happy to post pictures of the unit, and he does. What does it mean, Andrew?
Yeah, what does any of that mean? Because I could say, like, inverse fucking magnetic dielectric, and I kind of have an idea of what that means. But, like, what the fuck does that mean?
Okay.
That you just said.
Two top spin dual positive singularities.
Okay, so, like, he's got, like, two things that spin at the top that, like, they have, like, some double positive thing, and they're, like, two singularities. So he's got like two black holes with double positive fucking
So presumably
poles.
There's two poles that are both positive and create some sort of a negative vortex. And he has to sit inside the machine, and it takes a certain amount of time for time to move for him. Let me see if I can find it.
This is why we got to set up laws about time travel.
So he said his initial flight was from 2036 to 1975, 61 years. I then went from 1975 to 2000, 25 years. Later this year, one of two favorable windows will open, and I will return to my 2036. I am here now for personal reasons. The web page is not mine. I have been speaking online for about 3 months, and some people have been posting stuff that I've told them. So he's talking to other people on the internet.
Yeah.
Because some people have already made a website about him, basically. And then they keep asking him, like, hey, so who's going to win the Stanley Cup? And he's like, well, I know who won the Stanley Cup, but it's not like I poured over, like, sports records, and he gets all snarky with them, like, yeah, because if you're going to time travel, you have to know a lot about sports. Otherwise, your claims will never be valid, And he just is, like, really displeased with people in general, like.
Yeah, you guys are, like, you're a time traveler, okay? What the fuck did you just say about what powers your fucking ship?
Their attitude John Titor's attitude is reminiscent to what it's like in Interstellar when John Lithgow is explaining to Matthew McConaughey.
Matthew McConaughey.
He's
Yeah, that's Matthew McConaughey.
He's like, it was like Christmas every day. We had a new gadget that came out every day, and we just consumed, and it was just whatever. And we ruined the food and the biodiversity and blah, blah. Well, John Titor has a similar story about what happens, because he says that there's like a catastrophe and a world war, and a lot of his predictions were wrong. And that's where a lot of people just believe that he's an invention of an entertainment lawyer, supposedly.
Or disinfo. I mean, it's great entertainment. I mean, it should be a movie.
Well, what was interesting is some of his claims could be backed up. The 5100 that he came back for, the IBM 5100, it had a simple and unique feature that IBM didn't account for, and decided it was in their best interest to not advertise. And this is what he said. This accidental feature was thus removed from any future desktop computers. In order to make advantage of this feature, the 5100 I have now required a couple of special tweaks that had to be done by software engineers in 1975. Anyone who's familiar with this feature and was told to keep their mouth shut about it will be able to tell you what it is. And I believe it had something to do with fixing a stop run error.
Wait, so he had to get a computer in the 90s and then go back to the 70s to get it fixed so that it'll work properly, that he can go back to the future.
No, he jumped back all the way to the past in 1975, got one of the IBM scientists to help him, and then jumped forward into the year 2000 for personal reasons. And then there was supposedly 2 favorable windows that could open, and then he could jump back to his home line, supposedly.
Okay, did he say what the function was and why he needed the function?
I believe it was to fix a stop run error. I did not get all the way through reading the... Look at how long this is. I didn't get all the way through it, to be totally honest.
This is my thing, is that, like, if it has some sort of, like, code decoding sort of ability, wouldn't that be to, like, deal with AI and, like, what happens with AI? Because anyone who knows, like, all of this, because there is so much.
So... Grant Nelson, about a month into the post, says, John, you are right about the significance of the 5100, so I tend to believe most of what you say about the near future will also come to pass in my personal timeline. So there was somebody who was like, okay, I know what you're talking about, and I believe you. And then now I'm going to look and see if I can dig a little bit more on this real quick. So just be patient, bear with me.
So this is touch and go after the war. U.S. divided into 5 general areas based on their economic and defensive strengths. What? So, like, in this guy's timeline, America actually breaks up.
So he said that he needs the 5100 to translate between APL, Unix, and a few obscure IBM mainframe languages. Give me
AI languages. He's not saying it, but like he had to go and be able to talk to the AI. Like maybe they get in his timeline, like they lost control of him.
So the 5100 has the ability to translate between old IBM code, APL, BASIC, and a few tweaks in 1975. With a few tweaks in 1975, Unix. It may seem insignificant, but the fact that the 5100 is portable means I can easily take it back to 2036. I do expect they will create some sort of emulation system to use in multiple locations. Okay, here it says, John Titor says, I believe that your Unix will also have a problem in 2038. I don't think that's a secret, but maybe someone should put a 5100 aside 30 years or so.
Okay, so this guy was not even from our timeline. He's from like a parallel timeline.
Yes, but it only had a 2.5% variance supposedly. So he felt that he was able to comment on things that would occur. A few of which I took notes about and would like to speak of at some point here.
But obviously that 2.5, that's a lot of degrees of separation, especially for what happens. Cuz not only like okay, so he didn't even like, if this is true, right? He only came back when he was posting in our timeline, right?
I didn't find it in the contents of the post, but supposedly the information and the ability to translate allowed him to fix a stop run error, which scientists did not know about, and he, I guess, discovered and helped us fix nowadays, that we've gone back and actually fixed already in our timeline.
Wait, so like
I'd heard that from somebody who was super into researching this.
So what
an
he did,
inside source, let's call him.
so he was on a far enough timeline, came to our timeline, told us about this problem that they had that we just went and fixed.
Yeah.
So like we just totally diverged even farther away from that timeline
Potentially, yeah.
because we don't need to send John Titor back in time.
I believe so, even though it said, oh, you should put this aside for 30 years. Because presumably, by him telling us, yes, we would be able to fix it, yes. But we have also other problems that we have to worry about. Things that he predicted that did or did not come true.
Yeah, he said something about a war. What sort of war is going to happen?
Okay, the year 2008 is a general date by which everyone will realize the world they're living in is over. A civil war in the United States will start in 2004. I would describe it as having a Waco-type event every month that steadily gets worse. The conflict will consume everyone in the U.S. by 2012 and end in 2015 with a very short World War III.
Wow, we so missed that one.
That's what some of the other people we were listening to said. They were like, yeah, I don't buy it. It never happened.
Well, we were so far away. We stopped our stop error before we ever ran into it.
Well, here's the funny thing. I guess around these dates, the websites that host all the John Titor stuff logged a whole bunch of hits from intelligence agencies looking at the website. So it's possible that some of these things were averted or changed because John Titor came back. And the intelligence agencies in this timeline are just so badass. Maybe the ones who are controlling the timeline with their Illuminati powers. Which I imagine to look like giant Stargate machines. That's what I imagine.
Well, here's the thing is, do you think we're closer to Homeline or farther away from Homeline than John Titor's timeline? So those people who aren't in the know, Homeline is like the real timeline. That's like the real human timeline where they know about everything. Everything's running smoothly.
The Homeline is just whatever Homeline you're born on, dude.
Yeah, but there's a timeline called Homeline. So
in your universe, maybe.
Well, yeah. So
are you on Homeline right now?
Well, okay, that's
then
where,
if you're not, then what line are you on?
You got to ask yourself, are you on Homeline?
Of course, everyone's on their Homeline, unless you're a time traveler.
And then you're time traveling.
Maybe I'm not on my Homeline because I grew up in the Berenstain Bear universe.
Exactly. So that would be the whole idea of Mandela Effect, and to my mind, if Mandela Effect and all these deja vu things are real, you're just shifting timelines whether you like it or not. I guess after the harmonic convergence happened in 2012, nothing's stable no more.
Okay, should we talk about the Mandela effects now? Because we've been hinting at it this whole time.
Well, we're there. We've made it. We made it, and now I think we can talk about it. We can talk about John Titor and...
Okay, because I am from a universe where there's the Berenstain Bears, or the Berenstein Bears.
I'm from the Bernstein Bears.
You are too, okay, right?
Not the Berenstein, no, the Bernstein.
Oh my God, here we go. So you're saying you think it's a defective memory, is what you're saying? The Mandela effect.
It could totally be a defective memory, or some sort of deep fake sort of action taken. What's the big one that you like to talk about? Scary movie?
Okay, dude, this one blew my mind. There's a few that are pretty weird.
Because this one I totally am with you.
This one effed me up.
Yeah, so the joke was that dude's all smoking and then...
Oh, right, no, let's not. I want to tell you why I remember it.
All right, you do it.
I do, okay? I had a neighbor that believed that Pokemon were the devil.
Oh, they are.
And that you would burn the cards and the screaming of the devil could be heard when you burn them. And this lady was not cool with us watching anything that had to do with devils, demons, blood, killers, zombies, occult, anything. She would not let anyone watch Disney because there was witchcraft in a lot of it.
Yeah, Disney is witchcraft.
Pikachu gave those people all those seizures in Japan.
Okay, that was they're in a computer, and there's one episode that no one knows about here in the West because it gave a bunch of people seizures. It's the Polygon episode.
Huh.
Yeah, and you never see that episode.
I like Polygon. He's a cool Pokemon.
Yeah, he's pretty cool, but he's like a computer Pokemon.
So I don't think it matters. So Gabe's mom was not cool with us going.
I mean, fuck Gabe's mom.
Hey, I like Gabe's mom. She's just a little bit on the four corner everything is Satan reality trip.
Well, it's because everything is Satan.
Okay, but here we go. So here's why I remember this story. Gabe somehow talked his mom into into letting us go see Scary Movie.
What?
With just me, Adon, and
But that's
Gabe,
totally Satan.
just us three.
That's more Satan than any of those other Satans.
So this was like you and your best friends get to go out and see the new movie that has all the curse words and like all the bullshit at like age 13.
And all the sex jokes and
yeah,
everything.
it's like a South Park episode, our lives at this on this day when we get to go out on our bikes or walk. I frankly think we walked. I don't think we took our bikes. It doesn't really matter. But we took our bikes everywhere. And we went to the theater on the other side of town and we saw a Scary Movie. Dude, and when it got to this line, they all looked at me. And it was, I believe it was even in the trailer. And it was the line where Damon Wayans is smoking and he's under a blanket. And he blows a puff of smoke out and he's like, I see white people.
Yeah, doing the Sixth Sense fucking joke.
Yes! And then in the trailer, if you go back and watch the trailer, it cuts right to the white dude smoking. I'm sorry. My two friends, they had two big Mexican households. So I had like a bunch of Mexican friends that I lived with on my block. And it was like, I was like the one white kid. And so anytime it was like white people or white people joke, you know, it was like, oh, haha, you know, because they would laugh at the Mexican people jokes too. You know, because it was all in good fun. Well, when we got to that joke, I see white people. They fucking looked at me. There was a moment, you know what I mean? And that line just got used all the time. I see white people. And when I was like, no, somebody made a mistake. That has to exist somewhere. I can find it myself. Because I had a moment where I was like, no way. That line is in that movie. I think it might have even been on his shirt. In the trailer, it's not in the trailer, in the poster art that you would have on the movie, the box office art, the box office poster, where they're sitting in a theater and it shows them all like looking at the screen. And I think he had a shirt that said, I see white people. There are plenty of people that remember that. So Rona, the Time Witch, which we really should have had on this episode because he's a Time Witch. He's Wesley Snipes black, okay? We both heard that information at the same moment. And when I first heard it, I just looked back at him, looked him in the eyes, and he looked at me, and he shook his head no. Like he didn't believe it either, because he remembered the line as well. So in my universe, that's all the confirmation I needed. We both looked at each other like, yeah, that was a racially charged joke. I remember it too.
Yeah, and then there's another one, which is the Moonraker.
Okay, that one.
There's like a gag in it that like I guess they're trying to deep fake us to believe that there was no gag in it, because there's a spot where Jaws kind of like, you know, gets out a pile of rubble and there's like this girl there who like he smiles at her and then she smiles at him and reveals that she has braces. And like you look on the internet nowadays, it's like,
and it's like love at first sight kind of moment.
Yeah, and it's like they start playing the funny like old school music like they would in any movie, like it's freaking
like the Looney Tunes music when they fall in love.
Can't.
It's a classic piece of music. Should have looked it up, but I can hear it in my head now too.
Yeah, so like the thing was that the joke doesn't make any sense if she never had braces. Because and I remember this, and I've like I grew up with James Bond. You know, I watched every single James Bond up until the point where it became this whole other thing.
I've watched a lot of them. I personally have not seen Moonraker.
Well, Moonraker's the best. It's all about the space shuttle before the space shuttle.
However, when I heard about this Mandela Effect, I immediately believed the believers instead of the skeptics, because it's a very compelling case. When you see the scene, it does not make sense. But it really makes more sense with her having braces, and it's actually kind of funny.
Not only that, there's actually people who have gone in and proved that somebody put some software in there to remove the braces from the teeth.
Okay, but
because there's the picture with her with a champagne glass where they couldn't remove the braces, and you can actually see it.
I have the GIF right here. I will put it in the description. You should watch it. It is from a Reddit thread where a guy who does deepfakes, or at least uses the technology to do deepfakes, identified what appears to be braces in one scene where she lifts a glass of wine to her lips.
Champagne.
I don't know anything. Okay.
It's sparkling wine. I don't give a fuck.
And you can see the braces sort of kind of in some of the frames through the wine glass. And the joke doesn't make sense without her having braces. Yeah, another thing?
That's the big selling point for me. It's just like the joke doesn't make fucking sense.
Okay, Nextly, now this could partially describe why why everyone remembers the joke wrongly. This is my inner skeptic just gonna come out, but it also could be proof, like, for the believers as well. So it could go either way.
Okay,
So
do it.
there was a MasterCard commercial, I think, for the Olympics, and that same actor is in a grocery store, and you can look this up on YouTube, and he's buying all these things, and he has the new mini MasterCard, and it's super tiny. It's like, no one, you can see why it didn't catch on.
The guy who played Jaws is like a giant, so like,
Yeah,
it's
he's
like
huge.
even funnier because it's this tiny little card in this big man's hand.
Yes. And when he gets to the register, everyone's been treating him kind of like a freak, and it's not
It's
cool.
almost like he's Jaws from James Bond, you know?
Yeah, it's almost like people are just gonna treat him like that because that's all how they think of him. And there's like dramatic music to go along with it. The lady at the register is gorgeous. After the transaction, she smiles and she has these braces. And the joke is sort of replicated. Or now the inner skeptic says, well, maybe that joke that the advertiser thought up was so clever that it's inconceivable that it wasn't in the original. But
if you watch the movie, that's the joke.
it is the joke.
That's literally the joke, is that she feels awkward because you get like a flash of her before she meets Jaws, and she's like just awkward as shit. And then as soon as she meets Jaws, you see why she's awkward, because she's actually pretty cute. And then it's like, oh, you have braces, that's why you're so awkward. But this guy's got like a metal mouth, you know? And like,
Oh, I noticed this one at Christmas. Who's the animal that lies down with the lamb in the Bible?
all right, do you want what most people think? Because we've gone over this before.
Yeah, which animal lies down with the lamb?
All right, we're gonna give everybody like the Jeopardy moment to like write down their answer and make their bet. All right, so if you wrote down lion, you're wrong.
Yeah, you're wrong. If
Yeah.
you thought the lion.
Yeah, it's like really funny because it says the wolf will lay down with the lamb, and the lion was there.
Yeah,
Like,
the lion
lion's
was just there.
He's just hanging out, grooving on it. You know, he's just like to watch.
Yeah. It's Isaiah 11:6. In that day, the wolf and the lamb will live together. The leopard will lie down with the baby goat. The calf and the yearling will be safe with the lion, and a little child will lead them all. Is that what you remember? Is that really what you remember? Or do you remember the lion will live with the lamb? Or is
Or
that
lay
what
with the lamb, or some stupid thing like that. I don't get it.
Go look up the art. There's art for both. This Mandela Effect creeped my family out. I don't know if they'll want to talk to me next year.
But hey, like, I gotta say that it kind of gives some precedent to Aleister Crowley's thing about the child leading them all.
It does a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
We just mentioned Aleister Crowley. We don't need to talk about him for 15 minutes like we did in the beginning of the Chaos Magic episode. Instead of talking about Austin Osman's Spare, who's actually a chaos magician. I'm a little mad about that. I'm sorry, audience.
That's number 2. We just get like,
Yeah, we got to do number 2. We were just establishing that Aleister Crowley sort of created chaos magic, the same way he kind of created Wicca. But we'll get to that later.
No, you said no talking about him. We're done.
No talking about him. You're right.
We're done with that.
We're done with that. I'm probably going to edit that out
All right.
because we need to dedicate a whole episode before
Well, okay,
I bust
so
that
like,
one.
what about interstellar travel? Like interstellar time travel, like in Interstellar.
Ask the question again, Andrew.
What about the time travel in Interstellar, where it's more physics based?
So we're going to actually talk about real time travel now.
I guess we're talking about physics time travel now.
We're talking about time travel as
Like in real world sense.
as we understand it, as the establishment explains it to us through articles and textbooks
And really, really poorly explained animations about Einstein.
right.
Really, really poorly explained
So we're
animations.
So in Interstellar, these two astronauts go to this moon, right? It's a moon?
No, it's a
Or it's a
planet.
giant?
It's a planet around a black hole.
Is it around a black hole?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember that part. But okay. They land on this planet where the gravity is really intense and it's hard for them to walk. And the whole reason they're there is to wait for the new Tool album to come out. So presumably they should be back pretty soon.
And also, they were trying to meet David Bowie for Dark Star.
Yeah. So it's like for every second the music.
1 hour is 7 years.
Man, that's terrible. And I think it was in the music soundtrack, every tick, there's like a tick, tick, tick tick in the music soundtrack, and that corresponds to every day on Earth.
Well, yeah, I remember that tick being like, seemed like you were being rushed, that whole scene. Like, it was intense.
Yeah, that just gets me in my gut just thinking about it. And I believe that the person they have to do orbital rendezvous with is experiencing time differently.
Oh, yeah, it was like 23 years that he was just chilling in his little space station.
We did some reading about this, and this is actually the reading that got me into magic, but that was 10 years ago now, so I haven't been doing as much reading about physics since then. Probably a mistake. I probably should have just kept reading about physics. So if you're getting into magic, keep learning about the normal stuff too, because it's not meant to replace each other. But we'll start here. Special relativity works as thus: if you are accelerating, that means you're the one that's moving, and the person who's moving fastest is the one who's experiencing time the least. That's pretty much the rules of time travel, to break it down into podcast form.
Well, yeah, if you want to actually get it, because here's the example they give, and this is like a good thing, because like,
all right, I'm gonna listen to you and I'm gonna check you.
Yeah, we got to talk about this
because I'm kind of a physics Nazi, even though I don't know physics, which makes me kind of just an asshole.
Your rudimentary knowledge of physics, you're a Nazi about.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I'm afraid of using some of these words too much, but I don't want to self-censor. So anyway, let's continue.
Yeah. Well, like, we know, and I'm pretty sure our audience is smart enough, that when we say Nazi, we mean like
control freak,
like
maybe even a douchebag,
totalitarian in a sense.
Yeah. So it's the presumed negative.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, because it's weird political times, people are getting deplatformed.
Yeah. Let's all be adults.
Let's move on now. What were you going to say about relativity?
Okay, so the example they give, they're like, okay, imagine the simplest version of a clock so that we can actually like measure time, because
we can define time.
Yeah,
this is what we spoke about earlier.
Because when you really get down to it, the nitty-gritty, there's no real way to define time except for regular intervals of some sort of like
time.
Yeah, agreed upon structure.
It's sort of self-referential.
Yeah, and you got to define it by itself.
Is that why Saturn is the most outside planet in the magical scheme and corresponds to being like the archonic ruler, the demiurge force? Because
I guess so.
It's rules of its own volition, and it binds everything else to its own will, which is time.
Yeah, and it also corresponds with matter and materialism and material itself, because you can't separate time. The more
of which, the more gravity you have. The more gravity you have, the greater expression
of time.
So
yeah, that's like a head. That's a like those occult people were onto something.
Yeah, how did they know this stuff? And even some of the elemental associations of the planets, to me, seem accurate, like the hot and dry and cold and wet and blah, blah, for all the planets. I'm pretty impressed with that. I don't know how they did that. Because I learned about the actual planets before I learned about their associations and magic, and they're pretty correct from what I knew about the planets. Yeah, and their characteristics and qualities were very accurate.
Yeah, Venus is the hottest planet.
Yeah, Venus is the hottest planet, the brightest one, and Mercury is also hot and cold. The reverse side of Mercury can get kind of cold. It kind of roasts itself slowly, so we do see all of its sides.
But yeah, like I was back to the example thing, so we can understand how time travel works. So like the example they give you, they're like, okay, we're gonna take the simplest form of a clock, which is one photon bouncing between two mirrors in the interval of a second.
The reason you do that, okay, we're getting really technical. This is why I said that earlier. Okay, you need to define what time is, and it's hard to define time without being self-referential, so you just say time is what we see on clocks.
Yeah, time is this measurement. So
now we move to clocks.
Yeah.
So then we have to define what these clocks are. You can define what those are.
Yeah, like I said, we're defining this clock for the thought experiment as a photon being bounced between two mirrors, and the full round trip is 1 second.
Yeah, and that's how we measure a second. Period.
Right? And so like the experiment goes on to say, okay, now we have these two clocks and they're running at the same time.
Yeah, they're synced up.
Yeah.
And like, so imagine like the table.
Yeah, there's a table, a proverbial table, two clocks running at the same time. Now, one clock just whizzes past the other. And
At a constant velocity.
Yeah, constant velocity. It's
That's
just
important.
happening.
That's important. I had to figure that out.
Yeah. So these two clocks that are running 1 second for each second with their little photonic intervals are still going 1 second, but the one that is moving relative to the one that is stationary
From our perspective.
Yeah, from our perspective, or from the perspective of the other clock that's not moving, seems to be moving slower for its 1 second than it itself is moving.
Correct, because, and this is based on the fact that the speed of light is a constant, and the speed of light doesn't change. And based on the fact that the moving clock is, the light has to now traverse not just the up and the down axis, but it has to move to the right along with the mirror, thus creating a longer distance it has to travel before it can reach 1 second. And because light is a constant, and because time is defined by these clocks, we can say that time has effectively slowed down for the clock that is moving relative to us. Now, if everything is moving at a constant velocity and nobody's accelerating, then the clock that's moving, quote unquote, that we've been talking about so far, we'll call that clock B. If you are on clock B and you're hanging out there and it's not accelerating, meaning like you can take off your seatbelt and move around the cabin, you're not going to feel the push of the engines, you're not going to feel the push of the magician who pushed you, you're not going to feel anything pushing your train, right?
You're just floating there.
You're just
in a relativistic speed.
And to you, you're the one not moving. In fact, it's all that shit outside of your clock or your train that's moving. To you.
Wouldn't you be noticing all that stuff moving faster than you? Like
now,
time moves faster for it than you?
Now, this is what I had to go back and do the research to answer that question. Now, to you, you see the rest of those things as moving quickly. So from your perspective, it's their clocks that are, in fact, moving slower. So it appears to be a paradox. Like, if you had two astronauts that have clocks on each other and they're moving at, this is important, if they're moving at constant velocity, meaning they're not changing speed, they're just like coasting in neutral at the same constant speed and they whiz past each other, the other one would infer that the other one's clock was slow. Each one would think the other one's clock is slow. Now, here's where the time travel comes in.
Because all I see is just two Kerbal knots just like
floating away.
Yeah, floating through space.
Well, here's the deal. Even with the clock trains.
Clock trains.
I've turned them into trains. That we just sort of dropped that on everyone. Now,
yeah, why are you changing astronauts into clock trains?
Now, this is where somebody wins the argument.
Now we're getting confused.
To get these two people back together, you have to change your velocity. Velocity is your speed and your direction. So, in order to meet each other, you're going to have to change your speed and your direction. One of you is going to have to, at least. Or both of you could. But just for the sake of keeping things clean, we'll just say that only one person, maybe clock B, decides it wants to meet back up and compare notes with clock A. But in order to do so, it has to invoke the force of acceleration, which is a change in speed and direction. So by invoking acceleration, it pretty much loses its claim to being at rest, which it can always make the claim to whenever it doesn't feel the force of acceleration acting upon it. Sort of like how if you're in an airplane and you flip a coin in an airplane, it's not just going to like fly to the back of the airplane and like kill whoever's back there, because you and the coin and the plane are all moving at the same speed at a constant velocity. If the plane were to like accelerate or decelerate really quickly, you might fly backwards or forwards. And you could make the argument that of what was moving and what wasn't, basically. So once you invoke acceleration to have the clocks meet up with each other, well, there's basically the person who has to do the most accelerating will experience time the least, have experienced time the least when you put the clocks back together. So if clock B is going like near the speed of light and waits 3 years to come back, and it turns around and it takes 3 years to catch back up,
it's like 6 years.
It would take 6 years for clock A, but it would take like 60 years. Excuse me, it would take only 6 years for clock B to return to clock A, but then for clock A, it would be 60 years instead of 6. That's just what physics bears out. I don't actually have the knowledge to explain exactly why that is.
What's the guy's book? Elegant Universe? What's his name?
Brian Greene's Elegant
Yeah,
Universe,
Brian Greene.
and it's talking a lot about string theory and superstrings, so I believe the information might be outdated. It might be out of print. He might have something newer. But I read that a long time ago, and I just the stuff about relativity should not have changed at all. So that the stuff I was talking about from there hasn't really changed.
Yeah, explains the relativity. But here's the thing that like I came up with when we were talking about this earlier.
So because can I wrap this up?
Yeah, sure. And then like
okay,
yeah.
So this is where the metaphysical and the physics part come into play. Einstein speculated this first, that we're always moving. Okay, we're always moving at the speed of light.
I
it's
guess
just
my
that
part's gonna get
it's just that you have to you have to consider. You have to consider that time is also a dimension through which you can expend your speed, some of your light speed. So most of us at rest are expressing our light purely through time, and time you consider as and then if you're moving like at the speed of light, you're not experiencing time essentially, so light doesn't have an age. And so basically if you expend enough speed through the X, Y, and Z axis of space, you have less to expend in time, and thus you experience less time. So what okay.
Okay, so the one thing about this analogy though, with like the clocks and the motion and everything, and how like they're a photon bouncing between two mirrors at the speed of 1 second. Do you know how like big those clocks would have to be to actually like accurately measure like our second with like the distance it takes for a particle of light to travel? So
it travels at like roughly 300 million meters per second. So it would need to be, or it travels 186,000 miles per second. So the distance between
would have to be like half that.
Yeah, it would have to be. Oh, now, dude, I can't do math right now.
Yeah, I can't do math right now. We've been smoking bowls.
What's half of 18.6? That's pretty easy. I just don't know the answer.
Oh, that's like 9.
I can't do it. 9.3?
Yeah, 9.3.
Okay, so if you put the
93
mirrors,
million. It's 93 million.
Oh, that's very thelemic. So if you put the mirrors 93 million miles apart, and
or 93,000, sorry.
93,000 miles apart. Yes, if you put the mirrors 93,000 miles apart, our example kind of makes sense, but you'd have to be able to see the one photon, or just presume that the signal's moving at the speed of light.
Yeah,
and
if you're actually looking at it like that, where it's such a large distance,
we are just nerding out
and
at this point.
you actually are measuring the motion of the photon, it is definitely moving a lot farther than you might assume the motion would be for like a little desk clock. You would think that what the photon would be doing, you know? So like you really have to be thinking of these are large scale things with really, really small measuring devices.
Oh yeah. And all the examples, it's presumed that this isn't like just like errors from jostling or jiggling or problems. Like this is actually what scientists believe to be the truth. And based on the information I've been able to figure out,
this is what's agreed upon by mainstream physics.
Yeah. I feel like well.
What do you feel like you almost...
Okay, so we're pretty much at the hour. We've established that time travel in movies is usually wrong. Like in Looper, that's not what John Titor explains.
Okay, so Looper
if you get like in the past... Okay.
Yeah, so if like Looper was real, we'd be still fighting World War II through like time fuckery, you know? Like there'd be like Nazi flags actually appearing and then disappearing like every day based on like what people are doing in the past and in the like, because isn't that like a theory that,
in Looper?
No, but not in Looper, but like in like
it sort of works in Looper that way, because like spoiler if you haven't seen Looper yet, everyone hates Rian Johnson now, and it's a Rian Johnson movie, but I like Rian Johnson.
But
so
we don't watch it for Rian Johnson, we watch it for Bruce Willis.
I like Gordon Levitt.
Yeah, Gordon Hugh Levitt.
He's badass.
What was he? Nighthawk.
That's how
Nightwing.
That's how I imagine myself in the GURPS campaign. I just look like him. That's what I imagine myself as.
Yeah, we know.
First rule about Fight Clubs, we don't talk about Fight Club. So we're at the hour. Do we have time? And more importantly,
No, let's talk about like.
do we have the willpower to talk about how, according to some thread on 4chan, not the whole rabbit, and none of which will be expressed from which point will be the whole rabbit. It will be if we will be surmising a thread on 4chan. Do we have the ability to talk about how John Titor is actually Donald Trump?
I don't know if John Titor is Donald Trump, but I think Donald Trump's a time traveler. I also think there's like a few others. Like I think there's like some clandestine group of time travelers who went back.
Well, name some.
Okay, so
because we had somebody that wanted us to talk about one.
So Donald Trump.
Okay.
Obviously, Matt Groening.
Who's he?
Simpsons creator.
Okay, that's the person that. Yeah. I had somebody in my Uber yesterday who was like, "Oh yeah, he's a time traveler."
I don't know if Seth MacFarlane is. I kind of don't think so. I totally think Matt Groening is. Like Matt Groening has called so many things like a decade before it ever occurred. Like, have you ever watched Futurama? We're like literally living in that fucking scheme. Like in that reality, we're in that right now.
Okay, I did think it was weird that there was a shot of Donald Trump. It wasn't Trump Towers, so it's not impossible for an animator to at least, get this right. But there's like a sign in the background that falls exactly the same way it fell in the animation. And it's this shot of Donald Trump coming down the elevator or the escalator with his wife.
Well, okay, here's the other one.
And it's like down to the minutest detail accurate to the animation. Like, what in the hell, Simpsons?
Even more weird was, okay, there was the episode where Bart gets a vision at the Indian casino about the future, where he's like this really shitty person and like Lisa's president. In it, they're like, oh, well, we inherited a lot of debt from former President Trump. And then they're like, hey, you remember how like the previous administration was trying to invest in our nation's children? Big mistake. This whole thing about Trump being president, and also he was also said like to be president in the beginning of Idiocracy. So it's supposed to have started the entire Idiocracy movement thing. Trump has been president in the memosphere for a bit. Like,
okay.
Even Obama said everyone wants to be like Donald Trump.
Okay, yeah.
But Matt Groening straight up called out so much shit before it ever happened.
And that's a little bit of the joke in Saints Row as well. You go from being just this bottom level nobody to being the president.
Yeah.
Rising through the criminal ranks.
Yeah, why not?
So let me just explain, to wrap up the show, the 4chan explanation of how Trump has a time machine. And so
is that how he's like just so fucking gnarly with his fucking political strategy?
Yeah. Okay, so here's the thing. Now this is not us, this is 4chan. So anything we say, okay? I'll be careful. So after Nikola Tesla's death, the FBI ordered the alien property custodian to seize Tesla's belongings, even though Tesla was an American citizen. The National Defense Research Committee called an MIT professor to make sense of Tesla's notes in order to analyze anything that could be weaponized. This MIT professor was John Trump.
Oh, shit.
So John Trump claimed that there was nothing of real substance in the notes, and of course this was a lie. Although John Trump thought it was Tesla's time machine would be plausible, it was not plausible to create using the technology existing at this time. John Trump died in 1985 and left Tesla's notes to Donald Trump. So Trump, as John Titor, traveled to the future under the assumed identity of a soldier, where he discovered that America and the entire world had become a nuclear dystopia caused by radical Islamic terror. This is where 4chan comes in, because they really believe that's going to happen. John Titor began posting several forums in 2000 2001. We just told you about that story. And then some people are just like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. And, in classic 4chan, this is why Trump's tower got struck by lightning. Wasn't this the day he was officially nominated? And he's like, isn't this a movie plot or something? And then they have pictures of Back to the Future. Because I guess there's a character in Back to the Future that's just like Donald Trump. Like you were saying, how Trump's in the meme sphere.
No, wasn't it Biff became president or something?
And just like you said, that's how Trump has the ability to accurately predict and manipulate his political opponents. But this is not even the best part. It gets really good if I could find it. You see, and this is what the post says. Mike Pence is also a traveler who Trump met many years ago, depending on your perspective. Pence is from far further in the future and has a superior time machine. To put it simply, he can be present at the same time more than once. There can be more than one Mike Pence on Earth in a given period. I'm trying to keep a straight face.
What? Why is he trying to bring up Mike Pence? No
Listen,
one gives
buddy.
a fuck about Pence.
Listen, buddy, and just as a side note, if you thought Pence looks a little strange or out of place, it's because he's far enough in the future where everyone looks kind of like Mike Pence.
Oh, where everyone just looks like a negative?
Everyone just looks like Pence because everyone sort of looks the same.
Chicken sandwich.
Pence's motives to help Trump are as follows: avoid temporal conflict and become president himself, as promised by Trump.
Oh, like Biden was promised by Obama.
So, time travel, especially the rudimentary variant currently in use by a certain group of people, not Trump Pence, is not without its side effects. Their overuse of the technology will certainly have a negative impact on the health of the agents, and has time and time again, no pun intended, stymied a lot of Trump and Pence's plans. And then there's pictures of Hillary Clinton laughing. Okay, here's the thing where it explains if Trump's goofy comments about his own daughter. Ivanka was born to another father, and Ivanka was born to another father and Ivana in the original timeline. Trump was dating her, but Trump went back in time and has a large family now with Ivana, thus becoming Ivanka's father. So this is a story. He was dating Ivanka.
Okay, so
went back in time and got with his girlfriend's mom and gave birth to his future girlfriend. That's gross.
Or no, he gave birth to his he sired his
girlfriend
from a different timeline.
Yes.
So it's just that's a fucked up thing right there.
It is.
That's really you're like, I'm gonna go back in time and I'm gonna fuck your mom, and then you're like, damn, now I'm your dad. Who's your daddy?
See, that's stupid. That's stupid Pornhub power fantasy stuff. That's
some weird stuff.
So
right
Trump
there.
is causing the Mandela Effect. Trump's first attempt at defeating Hillary Clinton appeared in the late 90s. Trump hatched a plan to shame and discredit her husband, Bill Clinton, to the point that Hillary would not be able to successfully run for public office. And then, despite Trump's best efforts, he really tried to stop the tragic events in 9/11.
Yeah. So that's part of the mythos of this.
He was never able to stop it, and he feels terrible.
Yeah. So Trump is really just trying to stop 9/11.
He can't stop it.
Well, here's the problem: is he went back in time to stop 9/11. So the very fact that he is time traveling means 9/11 has to happen. Period.
Anywhere he goes.
Anywhere. And like he's kind of like trapped in that temporal loop.
So that's also apparently he's Kek, because Trump is Kek himself. Ancient Egyptians.
I think he was made Kek. Don't let the sputter into just 4chan dribble.
Okay. Well, that's the story.
Okay, so our president's a time traveler. The vice president's an even further time travel. Actually, I think Mike Pence might be closer to the gray timeline. You know?
Okay, so
like he might be a gray hybrid. Look at his weird skull shape.
So we're not gonna let the president end the show. We're gonna talk about in the future Penceverse.
In the Penceverse,
everyone starts to look the same, and all their genetics become like a cul-de-sac, and that's where the grays come from. They come from a world where the genetic diversity has totally.
Well, yeah. Once you have too much diversity, there's absolutely no diversity. Because if everyone's Black and Asian and Caucasian and Native American, then suddenly no one's anything.
It's like if you put a salad in a blender and just and then Mike Pence came out.
Yeah.
This is not an argument. We're trying to not make a political argument.
Maybe Vin Diesel's from this future.
Have sex with and marry who you want. That's my opinion. So yeah, so it's all in the blender. Mike Pence comes out, and eventually, they're like, well, how do we make it better? And then they just put black in the blender with some additions, and a gray comes out, and they're like, well, this is our life now. I guess we're grays. And they're like, wait a minute, I have an idea. You remember that time machine that John Titor used? Well, we got these things called UFOs, and they're way better time machines where they have like a .0000001 variance. They're like super good.
Like you can get really close to your original timeline.
Yeah, like you can go really far forward and really far back.
Isn't there like a wall in the time travel mythos?
I think John Titor said after 2500 there would seem to be a wall, and he wants everyone to look into that when they eventually get a chance.
Yeah, so there's like a time wall. I guess history stops
But
at
that
2500.
they were telling us that in 2012 as well.
Like the channel messages people.
Yeah, they're like, you hit a wall in 2012 and we don't know why. It's the end of the cycle.
Yeah, I think there's something important about the harmonic convergence and timelines.
That's kick.
That like all right, so like straight up there's like a universal singularity point where like all the timelines collapse and then they reopen again, like, you know, everything that was happening in the karma kind of like comes to fruition, and then we're in like an open timeline. Like right now after 2012, we're in like an open timeline where like we literally create our own reality in front of us. That like we're not bound like we normally are. Like maybe closer to like 2500 we'll be bound again to like what's already out there and what we've already like built up. But right now we're riding without training wheels. We're creating our own realities. We're not caught into a predetermined timeline right now. Like we're developing what it's going to become.
It's always like that though.
Well, I this is my thing, is I assume it has something to do with like the harmonic convergence.
Oh, like yeah, so karmatically there's points where things can really move around.
Yeah, we're in the free zone. We're in like a karma free point of time.
Man, when you take time travel into account, it just sort of mixes everything up on that scale, but...
Yeah, and we never even got to, like, World War II being fought through time.
Well, the whole idea is the UFOs are just time travel machines, and, the UFOs... Okay, so what did we talk about earlier? That gravity and acceleration can be considered equal. If you can bend gravity waves and change gravity, presumably maybe you could travel through time as well.
Bashar said all you got to do is change the frequency of the object you want to travel.
Didn't Bob Lazar say that there were strange time effects when they were testing the UFOs?
Yeah, there's strange time effects, missed time. Also, that shit got really cold because it was running at like 100%, over 100% efficiency. So it's actually drawing away heat, which Dan Winter actually has like shit to explain that. Something about it creating implosive plasma waves.
And we already said
it's like orders and structures matter.
And early on, we thought UFOs could be just the Babajis and their Vimanas or whatever.
Yeah. I want them to be Hindu gurus and their Vimanas. You know, like maybe they get shot out of the sky and then they reincarnate, like, or like re-solidify their body on, like, back on Earth, or maybe they're just stuck in UFO form in Area 51.
Remember Tucker said that you needed 3 Merkabas in order to time travel, and then if you look in John Valo Melchizedek's book, that's what like some of the breathing exercises is like. You are rotating. You have like one stationary Merkaba,
and then 2 moving relative.
That's what that weird dark magician Tucker was talking about that one time.
Oh, dude, that dude was such a spaz.
He hacked your DNA, bro. I saw it.
Yeah, but then we kicked him the fuck out.
Well, he had to. He hacked your DNA, man.
Well, here's the thing. Is like you were telling me about that chaos magician guy in the Ice Wars.
Yes.
Who was doing all that Qigong stuff. And like, well, that's the thing about all that dark sorcery bullshit. You can become as powerful as you want. 3 dudes are going to overpower your ass and fucking like bring your ass to the ground. Like, it's straight up that Jordan BP thing about the chimps. The tyrannical chimp doesn't last long.
How did you pronounce it? I think I said it Qigong.
Qigong.
Okay, so you say it correctly.
You can do it with a Q. People mostly do it with a Q.
Because our listener Sparkle Plenty pointed out that I said it wrong. But yeah, we love you. We love you, Sparkle Plenty.
You're probably reading it with the Q, but yeah, it's Qigong, and it's usually spelled with the QI instead of the CHI.
Well, that wraps up our episode about time travel. We're going to stop talking about time travel because we want to have an episode about Terminator. And if you guys are interested in having a Fnord report and learning about Terminator, let us know. See if that sounds like a cool idea. We'll get it on a little quicker rather than later. And we're planning to do a short show because, man, I worked a lot this weekend. I did not have a lot of time to sit around and research, But I did have a chance to take my daughter to see The Lion King. So I think we might do an episode just for our Patreons about The Lion King.
Maybe.
Which I have to mention, thank you very much to our Patreon subscribers. You guys are our lifeblood.
Who we shouting out to?
Mantra Plonzi, who pledged and gave us $5 to become a bunny.
Now that person's better than the rest of you.
Yes, they are, unless you are...
At least relative to where we're observing.
Yes. Thank you for listening to The Whole Rabbit. If you have any show requests, let us know. I'm your host, Luke Madrid.
I'm Andrew Haskins, producer, I guess.
Yeah. Eat carrots, shoot lasers.